Hello, this is the Comedy Slab. I'm Adrian Lacey. I'm in the verdant southeast of England, nay Kent. And equally verdant is the setting for my Comedy Slab partner, Shane O'Connor, who is in the posh seats of the Midlands, I think we'd have to call it. We don't want to give too much away, otherwise you'll get marauding people.
I'm just looking up verdant. Hang on a second. we're only 35 seconds in, and he's already using words I don't understand.
You've lost the plot, quite literally. It's next to verger, but you probably don't understand that either with your Catholic roots. I'm not sure you have vergers.
No, we had virgins, but not for long.
Well, okay. I couldn't possibly comment. We're not a minute in, and already it's gone off the rails. Now, off air, because we have this conversation, just before hitting the record button, and you were saying, in fact, you did say this while we were recording last time, that you've come round to Jimmy Carr, and I can now add him to my list of people with a messianic complex. Never trust anyone with the same initials as our Lord. Doesn't matter if you're Catholic or Protestant, the Lord is the same. And so we can add Jimmy Carr to the list that already includes, but is not limited to, Jeremy Clarkson, messianic complex, Jeremy Corbyn, definitely messianic complex, Justin Lee Collins, jury's sort of out, or came back on him actually, but actually, leave it, moving swiftly on. But I will exempt. I don't know if you know his name, the lead singer and indeed marvellous songwriter of Delamitri, Glaswegian Miserabilists, one of my favourite bands.
You missed out John Cleese.
Oh, well, yeah, okay. But do you know the name of lead singer of Delamitri?
No.
He is exempted from this. It's Justin Curry.
Oh, of course.
Because he is actually literally the Messiah. He is that good.
Right.
So he can lord it over me anytime. But anyway, that's a digression, but we're quite good at those. In fact, we're better at digressions than we are at our core purpose, which is to put comedy on the slab, be it TV, radio, or podcast, or other digital form or format. And each week a different comedy. We take it in turns to set each other's homework for the following week. And I set last week's homework, and it's my turn to put on the slab a radio show. And this is one with a bit of a topical twist, and it is called Lobbyland. You'll find this on BBC Radio 4. I think it gets a repeat on BBC Radio 4 Extra. You'll also find it on the app BBC Sounds, certainly within the UK. And outside the UK, you might find it via bbc.com. But his nibs, Shane, will no doubt, if you can find any other way of receiving this show, you can be sure Shane will put a link to it in the blurb that accompanies this era podcast.
I don't think there is. I mean, I did spend the entirety of last week sat on the roof with a tinfoil hat on to see if I could get it that way. And, and I can definitely say that is not an option if that's one of the ways you were thinking of doing it. But it's a damn sight easier than using BBC Sounds website. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. A little bit more dangerous, but yeah, there's some tweaks they need to do on that.
I'm always mesmerised by that because it's just like a front end, isn't it? It's just like, what was the point of all that? Presumably they spent a load of money on it, and most shows you click on, it takes you back to the old Radio 4 website.
Does it?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
And then it takes you back to the sounds thing interface again, where the audio it's like
oh right, yeah. You're talking about going via the website as opposed to having it as an app. On
I haven't got. I can't afford the app. We bought some cheese this week.
Free at the point of use, what you like.
So can I just say, I've had a waffle before we came on air this evening.
Well, you've had a waffle on air as well. But,
I thought it saves me doing it. But I'm on. You just before we started recording, you just tapped your tummy and you went, "Look at that!" And I have to say, for anybody who doesn't know Adrian, he's like 6 stone ringing wet, and in order to get up to his weight, his designated weight to do this podcast, because you have to be a certain weight to do this podcast, he has to wear a very heavy hat.
What's your tin hat, I think?
Yeah. And I'm on. We've just started. Well, my wife has started on. Not Weight Watchers. What's the other one? Fat Squinters. No.
Fat Fighters. That's on. That's on the fast. No, on the Little Britain, isn't it?
That's it. Yeah. Oh, what's
Fat Fighters?
What's
it's half the fat, so you can eat twice as much.
And I have lots of dust. Dust.
That's right. That's right.
Dust. No, what's it called? Not Weight Watchers. What's the other one?
I'm really not the person to ask.
Slimming World. Slimming World. Yeah.
Okay.
So that
World
that
of
was
Slim.
I thought I'd have my treat before I came on, and so I've had a waffle, and
Right.
and a spoonful of yogurt and some.
Helps the medicine go down. In the most delightful. Carry on.
And some fruit. And I'm flaming starving, so let's get this podcast out of the way. So
Is that why you're so grumpy with me? It's a sugar load, a bit like one of the bears last week, or the week before last, was it? And your favourite, The Pin, the sketch with the bears in, all sat sitting on the same table.
All at the wedding, they were saying, I can't believe so lazy putting all the bears together.
As if we're going to get on.
Yeah. Sorry, anyway, I interrupted you. So,
that's all right, I'm used to that after all these years.
Lobbyland?
Lobbyland, yes. Not Blobbyland, which is something entirely different.
Never got that off the ground, did he?
Well, I think it went for a bit and then, it ended in recriminations and probably court cases.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to pass the signs for it, as anyone would, was it on the M5? It was a bit... I'm not sure how many accidents that caused. I thought that was a bit strange.
It was ahead of its time in a way, wasn't it? Because, I mean, I was talking to somebody the weekend and they were just saying about how they used to go to this place, which was like not a fairground, but like that kind of thing. And now it's a Peppa Pig world. So and down your very neck of the woods. In fact, you could probably, if you stretch your head out the window, you can probably see it from your house. You've got, and they've just opened one in the southwest as well now. Because I know some friends have gone down there. They've got Diggerland, haven't they?
Yeah.
So,
and I've still not been there.
No,
but I haven't got the excuse of having a young child in tow. So
he hasn't been to
remain
Diggerland, but it is on his bucket list.
It's a very long list, though. Next to bungee jumping off the Eiffel Tower. There's quite a few in there, actually, but I haven't got round to it yet.
Anyway,
aren't they all made up your way, JCBs? Are you Toxeter?
Yeah, I mean...
surely Diggerland should be in Utoxeter.
You'd have thought.
Damn you, Marjorie.
You'd have thought, wouldn't you?
You'd have thought that would be the logical place.
The home of the digger. We are the spiritual home in Staffordshire.
Of the digger.
Of the home of the digger.
Because we all dig a digger.
That'd be good on the signs, wouldn't it? Never mind all this. Warwickshire has got the bear and the staff and the home of Shakespeare and all that.
What? Which bear? Paddington.
The Warwickshire bear. I don't know what he is actually. Yeah, probably. I know he's naked. But anyway, yeah.
Moving on.
It looked good on the signs, wouldn't it? Staffordshire, the home of Dr. Johnson and the Diggers. What a great band!
That was a pub band, wasn't it?
Dr. Johnson and the Diggers. I'm right.
Anyway, so Lobbyland, yes, it's a half-hour show. It's in the classic sort of 6:30 evening slot. Although, of course, you can time shift it however you wish on Shane's favourite app, the BBC Sounds app. Now, is it slightly misnamed? I mean, you do know that the verb to lobby, lobbying, the very idea, the term comes from the fact of the lobby at the Houses of Parliament.
No.
So anyone who thinks, as I used to, oh, that's a coincidence. There's a word lobby meaning a sort of hall area, and there's also a verb to lobby, which is, I'd assume came from a different root, but no. Did you know? Oh, that's another digression.
Was
the
that
word commuter?
Presumably, that's where they used to go and buttonhole the MPs to ask them to do things for them, was it?
I mean, presumably, yeah. And to this day, I suppose it's much more organised and professionalised. I was going to say, but it's another digression. But I've started, so I'll finish. The word commuter, I thought that was funny because you talk about commuting a life sentence. And believe me, taking the train into Victoria Station every day can feel like a life sentence. But it actually comes from your ticket was commuted to a normal rail ticket. It came from a book of tickets or something, and it had to be commuted So they became commuters.
Oh,
They
right.
were the people who changed their tickets. Anyway, it's not really about lobbyists, although I like the alliteration of Lobbyland, which is why they maybe went for it. But it's actually, it centres really on the political editor of a sort of cheap and cheerful so-called Hot Takes. I think it's an online publication. It's a thinly disguised BuzzFeed, I think, because they talk about listicles. You heard me correctly. And so they have, for instance, the daftest characters who've appeared at elections, so the Monster Raving Loony Party. And then they get a laugh out of Nigel Farage at least once, I think twice, actually. So we've got Sam, who is the political editor, and high time for the first of 3 audio clips from the show. You're not going to get video clips from a radio show anyway. I tried to squeeze some pictures out, but they weren't there. So the phone goes, as you will hear, and it is... So we're hearing, as it were, full, clean studio quality. We're hearing Sam... Samantha, it is, who's the political editor of Hot Takes, and one of her journalist, if that's the term, or blogger colleagues is giving her a buzz.
It's the office.
That's all right. You take the call. I'm going to hop off at the next opportunity. This boat is so unstable, it feels like it's about to run for President of the United States. Toodaloo.
Hi, Mia.
Hey, Sam. How's the snooze cruise?
You mean the start of the political memoir season?
Oh, God. Sorry, whatever you said there was so boring, I just went into a coma. So are you coming home for Box Set Friday?
No, actually.
What? Sam, you promised.
Well, look, Tom Shriver's offered to let me write his memoirs.
Oh.
Could be my ticket to becoming an author. Just for once, writing something that doesn't have pop-up ads.
Yeah. Amazing.
But look, I'm heading over to Tom's London house later to start the research. The thing is, obviously, I don't want Gideon to know I'm moonlighting as Tom's ghostwriter, so can you tell him I'm working on a story?
Yes, sure, I'll tell him.
Oh, Mia, you are an angel.
I know.
Big shout out to anyone who's called Ophelia Lovibond.
Is that the actress's name?
Yeah, the woman.
Well, she had to be an actress, really, with that name.
The woman who plays Samantha Peakes. I didn't recognise her, but she was actually Izzy in W1A. Do you remember the one that Will really fancied in W1A? He was always trying to sit next to her. She was like a kind of researcher or something like that, I think. I can't remember what she did.
Right, but this is strange. Sorry to stop you there. I'm not seeing her listed. That's what threw me.
She's the main character.
They've dropped her off the BBC website. Well, what's throwing me, which doesn't help, they should have the cast with character names to help people like me who struggle with such things. And they've just listed half a dozen actors, and the name you just said isn't in there.
No,
bizarrely. Anyway, so you're better researched than they are.
No, there was another guy as well that appeared. He played Nath, I think it is, and he's not listed on the BBC website of people who appeared. It's appalling, I think. Really, I got it off the comedy.co.uk website.
Ah, right. Well done. Well, we all know to look there.
Yeah, I do, rather than anywhere else. But what a name, Ophelia.
Say it again.
Ophelia Lovibond. I thought that had been outlawed. I tell you, if you touch my Lovibond again, there'll be trouble.
Well, there'll be trouble if she doesn't touch my Lovibond. Now you got me excited. And Ophelia, I mean, that's a kind of reference, arguably, to is it Hamlet? Where,
I don't know whether because that's an Irish name, isn't it, Ophelia?
Is it?
Yeah, I don't know whether I don't know whether that's her real accent, and she was playing English in W1A, or whether.
The other way around.
She's putting on an accent now. Either way, it's pretty impressive in terms of not being able to recognise her. Great cast on this, I have to say. Charlie Higson you don't hear very often these days, do you, from the Fast Show?
No, he's more a writer these days, isn't he?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
And the voice, Lewis Macleod, who appears in everything.
The impersonator
From Dead Ringers. He always does Terry Wogan when everyone needs a Terry Wogan. He's always the one that does the Terry. I heard him as Terry Wogan in a comedy the other week. I can't remember what it was now, but yeah, I thought, that's Lewis Macleod, definitely.
But you could be the Poundland. No, not Poundland. The quality alternative to him.
Bargain basement, in case anybody wants one really cheap, yeah.
So what's he doing here? Again, he hasn't made my list that I'm looking at.
I think Lewis Macleod does all the voices of famous people like Jack Straw or whatever I think that's Lewis Macleod throughout the...
Well, that's an odd one. We'll get to that a bit later on.
Yeah.
Especially when we hear said Jack Straw. I should be seeking a headline from you since it was my homework I set for you.
Right.
I didn't know much about it. I'd only sort of half heard half an episode, which is like listening to a quarter of one the other week. But I thought it was interesting enough, and I was particularly captivated by the topical twist, which I'll get to in a mo. But anyway, it was my homework for you. So your headline for me to summarise your feelings about the show?
The Archers does comedy.
Oh dear. That's not Archer as in the graphic novel type. Stick it up your jumper.
Yeah.
Okay, that doesn't sound like effusive praise if I decode it correctly.
You might be right.
Okay, we'll leave that there. That sort of non sequitur type style character that you polish up every now and again. I had great hopes when I saw who was in it, and I thought, oh wow, this is going to be great. But that's the best way I can describe it. Do you know what I mean when I say that it has the sound of the Archers? Well, it's funny you should say that because I was listening to John Finnemore on an edition of Loose Ends the other week, and he referred to, well, he does a Mickey take of the Archers, and he confesses he's not an Archers listener, but he's exactly on point in terms of, there's always a surly woman saying, this will never happen, and there's a rural person comes in and every scene starts with this, that, and the other. I mean, he's making wild generalizations for comedic purposes. I'm guessing you mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but something very formulaic and safe about it.
And very middle class and...
Won't frighten the horses.
Yeah, and like kind of staid and unrealistic. I kind of think, the writing and the delivery, the sentence, we'll come to the writing a bit later on, but the sentences, it's like kind of, you think, God, who talks like that? Nobody talks like that. And I'm always mesmerised by that. I have to say, I came away from this thinking, I should really write something. Because if that gets commissioned, I should really write something because I've got more awareness, self-awareness about, or even awareness of society to know how people talk and what's real and what isn't.
I mean, we have to factor in it is fictional and it is playing for laughs, and not everyone gets laughs in every line of conversation, do they? Or even a fraction of them. I mean, you can overdo the realism thing, is what I'm saying.
I started listening to the audience because the audience were very, very subdued by it, and I didn't, there weren't any side splitting, were there, in that sense? And you kind of then you get a bit obsessed with listening to the audience, and that can ruin it for you a bit then, because you're kind of listening to reaction. Because I'm sitting there thinking, I don't find any of this funny. I find it like predictable, and just not good enough, really, not of the standard that you expect. So like when you think of like something like Cabin Pressure, and the writing and the delivery.
Which, of course, is the aforementioned John Finnemore.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. But you kind of... I mean, that is head and shoulders above anywhere near anything that this approaches on its best best sort of time, really. What's your headline? What would you say on this one?
Oh, now you put me on the spot, because I I didn't think I was going to be asked that, so I prepared one.
See,
Um,
nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition,
now that headline's been used before.
right?
I think you find it was Monty Python. Yeah, I haven't got a neat encapsulated, snappy Sun-style headline, but I can see your criticism, but I cut it a bit more slack than you, because why? I don't want to frighten off people from trying these shows, and if they don't work perfectly well, it's a license to make mistakes. I mean, that is comedy.
They're not newbies though, are they? That have written this. They're not youngsters.
You tell me. You've done more research. Forgive me.
Christopher Davies, who'd written previous to this, he's written that The Revolution Will Be Televised, and he's also written for Kevin Bishop. Alistair Griggs, who's written for Armstrong and Miller and Kevin Bishop. Jon Harvey, who's written for. He actually wrote Rob Newman's Total Eclipse of Descartes that we slabbed.
Oh gosh! Wow.
And Sarah Dempster has written for Matt Holness, amongst others. So they've all, I think they've all been gag writers as well. So I was really shocked that the gag count wasn't there. And, I mean, if you look behind the scenes as well, you've got people, Jon Harvey we mentioned, he's the producer, but Lucy Armitage used to produce people like the late Linda Smith and Mark Steele. These are all they're not new to this. This is kind of their baby, as it were, their chance to write and sort of produce something of their work.
Can I float a theory? I have no idea of the sort of way this was made and the background, and I'm not supposing for a moment it will really placate you or excuse it in your view, but 4 writers for this. I mean, we don't always know, because sometimes we've talked before about American series or maybe even British series where one person per week gets credited, but it turns out it's all team written. I think maybe in a half-hour show to have 4 writers, and also 4 writers that each of whom you imagine could actually write it on their own. Too many cooks, could it be?
I think you're absolutely right. There was a point I was going to make as well, is that it's comedy by committee, and I always think that's a tough one to do. It really is difficult to do. I think if you've got to write in partnership, I think it's a lot easier, because however you work,
just two people.
Yeah, whether you work where one writes it and the other one refines it, or whether you both throw in gags together, however you do it, 2 is an easier number to write with, and 2 is an easier number to reach consensus as to whether something's funny or not. I think once you get into the committee stages, that can cause a real problem. There is another side of it as well, the way that I think it was made. But do you want to play a clip, we'll mention it afterwards, because you might hear it in this clip as a giveaway, and I'm pretty certain you've picked up on what I'm going to say. Right.
Well, this takes us to... Actually, I didn't really set the scene properly the last time round, although I think a very bright audience will have put 2 and 2 together, and there were certain clues in it. But essentially, this episode starts with them on a boat, which is, it turns out, a sort of junket for the press to promote another politician's book, which is called The Whole Ruth, after the MP who is Ruth so-and-so. Can't remember her surname, forgive me. But clip number 2 we're going to hear now takes us to our Charlie Higson character's home in Montague Square, where, incidentally, John Lennon lived for a while.
Oh, did he?
In the West End. And talking of flatmates, as we were last week, if you're going to have a flatmate, having someone like Jimi Hendrix, I think, could be quite interesting. Actually, it was Ringo Starr's house, but John lived in it for a while.
Can you imagine?
So anyway,
you come home and you go, "Oh, Jimmy, you've set fire to your guitar again. There's scorch marks up the sideboard." Sorry, man.
Yeah, and you've burnt the toast, so you're no good at that. Anyway, so we join them in the house, and there's, I suppose you could say, a celebrity butler. Listen out for the name reference there. And this will pretty much set the scene as to why. Well, we know Sam's round there because the MP has shown an interest in having his own life story told, and she would be the ghostwriter. So let's soak up some of the atmosphere at Montague Square.
Your Bloody Mary, sir.
Wasn't it cognac?
Close enough. He never was that hot on the detail. Thank you, Straw. Is there something else?
A couple of things, sir. Some sandwiches for you from Chef.
Marvellous. Please give my compliments to Hoon.
Jeff Hoon as well. Wow.
Also, some more guests have arrived, sir.
More? No, I don't think so.
Guests from Ms. Peaks.
Oh, really? What's this, Sam?
Oh,
Hi!
Oh.
Ah, well, I never. It's the other two stooges. Mia and Statham.
Nathan.
Welcome to my humble abode.
This is about as humble as Gemma Collins collecting a BAFTA.
It's just my little London pied-à-terre. You didn't tell me you were bringing reinforcements, Sam.
No, I didn't. You know, I can probably manage.
Oh, come on, Sam. There's no I in team.
There's no you either.
But there is tea, and Straw here can make you plenty of it, or whatever refreshments you like.
Oh, lovely. Glass of rosé, please.
Mine's a punk IPA or Beavertown. Just something really hoppy.
I'll see what we have.
Like the audience are kind of laughing at stuff, and I'm thinking, I have no idea what you were laughing at.
I did wonder why Hoppy got a laugh.
Yeah, I don't. No, it draws me back to the point that about how they record this. I kind of got it's very Shoreditch, by the way, wasn't it? You know, I'll have a what was it? A Beavertown IPA. Thinking, yeah,
but
probably
maybe that was the laugh though. But I mean, it is London based, so
yeah. It's just like kind of works inside the M25 though. But if you want to be accessible, you know,
you just have to drive to Swanley and find it funny.
Swansea, what are you doing there? I should have paid attention. I think they write more than you hear, and then they chop it about because there are some of the worst edits in any radio program I've ever heard.
Really?
Did you catch them?
I did hear some. I heard a couple of bumps, but they were strangely with the opening and closing music. I think there's an atmosphere change. I thought I didn't go back to it, so I don't want to lay into it. But you're obviously hearing
real clonkers,
speech edits.
Yeah, real clonkers, real, and you think, oh, blooming heck, I heard that one bounce into the other one there, kind of thing. Which, and in fairness, I listened on headphones, and we've said this before. It's this 6:30 comedy on Radio 4, is it? Yeah. And of course, people have been in the cast; they probably won't even pick it up. But for a company the production company that produces it, I think the guy who runs the production, who owns it, actually works for the BBC. And he's got his production company and whatever, but they're all about...
it's Naked Productions, we should say.
Yeah.
Although I have gone to comedy.co.uk and they've got it wrong, or unless it's owned by Hat-Trick. They've got it down as a Hat-Trick production.
No, I don't think it is, and I don't think they are.
No, I think that's a mistype.
Misprint. But yeah, they kind of pride themselves on, doing interactive quality audio and that kind of stuff. I was really shocked that it was like it was, but of course, what can you do? If you've got to make a cut there, you've got to make a cut there, haven't you? And you haven't really, it's how you record it, isn't it? If you put something that's substandard in, you can't improve the standard. It's like when you record music, isn't it? You say, right, okay, get the sound right before you record it, because you can only make it so good afterwards. So
what are you meaning by that? Because I thought you were saying it was the quality of the edit, just the join, but you're saying that the source material is not quite right. No,
yeah, in as much as if you record it with a live audience and variables like that, so then you're trying to edit, where people are laughing or whatever. It makes it harder, doesn't it? Whereas if you recorded it clean and then played it to an audience and then they laughed.
Yes, although I would have thought by now they were recording the actor's speech separately to the audience, but I don't know that for a fact. I was backtracking to a bit of quality control, listening to an old Slab where we talked about editing. It's actually Alex Edelman. And I was saying, as is the case, I saw a show being set up in the Radio Theatre, but this is a few years ago, so that's why I'm a bit cautious. And I was surprised then they were doing a mix as live, as it were.
But isn't it
Sorry
like
if this is
recording
getting too
drums?
technical.
Is that no matter? I mean, you can try and record separately, but you get spill.
You would get some spill, but you ought to be able to finesse that. You can either put, and people argue about the morality of it, but you could put an additional laugh on top to cover it, or I'm not saying that's the ideal way, but there are many ways of doing it. But they also, well, I'm not sure they're necessarily doing what you were saying you thought they were doing. They might just be cutting between takes. But anyway, I've noted your point.
And the content, I mean, I don't know. It was. There were a lot of digs at the right wing of politics, weren't there? It was very left wing, and I kind of think, like I said to you before, the American Orange Man is Bad comedy just does nothing for me. I'm just like, give me something original. But it was like constant, a boat so unstable it could run for president. Boris Johnson gags throughout, the Brexit Party candidates, and UKIP splitting the Nutter vote, and digs at Robert. I mean, Robert Kilroy Silk, for God's sake. I mean, how long's he been out of the blooming game?
Did get a good laugh though, that line.
Well, yeah, maybe.
So they obviously recognised it.
They've all come in from Shoreditch, having drunk their Beaverbrook IPA or whatever it is.
I should have joined them just to wind you up.
You should have got yourself one. I'd have felt happy for you. Do you know what I mean? And I just thought, and then so like the gags against people like Jack Straw, which were very gentle, were almost. I felt that they'd put those in there so that they wouldn't have the criticism. Oh, well, it's all very left leaning.
Right.
But
well, on that. Again, I've noted your point there. On that, and given it was, remind me Lewis's surname?
Macleod.
Macleod. I always want to say Louis McNeice, but that was a poet. Given that he's an impersonator by trade, were you slightly surprised that there was no attempt to sound like the people he was, if that is him? I mean, it's not clear from the cast list.
No, whoever it was.
Even
though.
on...
Yeah.
But there was no attempt to make the butler sound like Jack Straw.
I thought he was Russian when he first came on.
I thought he just sounded too posh to be a butler, full stop. Or he was trying to sound like a sort of Jeevesy character, I guess.
Right.
I don't know. That's how it came across to me. I was just sort of surprised. And then they're playing for laughs with Danny Alexander, who's got a very high-pitched voice in this piece. To the point of obviously being a comedy character and a pastiche rather than sounding anything like the original Danny Alexander.
Yeah. Who's David Anscombe and Jonathan Kelly and Mel Munson?
Well, they're fictitious MPs, aren't they?
Oh,
They'd be
right.
slightly
Okay,
odd.
I didn't get. I'm thinking, are they? Because when you talk about them in the same breath as Danny Alexander and Jack Straw and all the others.
That was that was a little bit clunky, I felt. Unless they are genuine MPs and I haven't heard of them. But, the thing is, there are loads of MPs who, unless they're your local MP, you wouldn't have heard of, because not all of them sort of scramble over each other to be in every radio or TV interview.
No.
But it was quite odd because the way they were woven into the script, it sounded like we were. That's why you were confused, I think.
Yeah.
Myself for a moment as well.
Well, I did Google him, actually. I couldn't find a David Anscombe, but I found a Mel Munson, who's a glass artist. And two Jonathan...
a glassist.
Yeah. You're a right glass artist, you are, mate. You want to sort yourself out. And two Jonathan Kellys, one of whom is a folk singer and the other one is a murderer.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I could murder a good folk song.
I was going to say you'd have to listen to the two of them sing to decide which one was which, and then it might not be clear.
I'm bare thinking about. Sing Streets of London.
Yes.
Reminds me, it was that Big Train.
A Big Train,
or
yeah.
Ralph McTell trying to do
Streets of
another
London.
song.
I've just done that one. Streets of London.
That's quite cruel.
I love it.
Anyway, is it time for our third and final clip?
I think it is.
It is. Yeah. So, so we've had this reference earlier. In fact, I made a reference to the listicle with strange characters who'd appeared on election platforms. The obvious one is the sort of monster raving loony party. One they mentioned which brought back a sort of PTSD effect because I remember this character was on stage with a certain Theresa May, if you can remember that far back. Was that Buckethead was supposedly a serious candidate. I mean, this is part of British eccentricities, I think, at election time. You can't imagine it happening in Putin's Russia, can you, somehow? Or perhaps in China or any other authoritarian regime.
Any other communist country or socialist country, yeah.
Yeah, we should be grateful, perhaps. Anyway, so there is a bit of a spoiler alert here, but I think that's in the nature of what we do here, and there are other editions of the show to enjoy. And I don't think this ruins this show anyway, but it turns out we might know who had formerly been Captain Crabstick, because I should say in setting up this clip that one of our hot takes journalists has been attacked, as it were, by a crab, a giant crab she found in the wardrobe.
Look, I got bored watching election footage after like 30 seconds. I mean, like, seriously, who cares? So I just started rooting around the room for anything interesting. Then I opened that big cupboard, and the next thing I know, this massive thing with claws is springing out at me.
Well, well, well. Look at you all.
Oh, hello, Tom. Or should we say, aye, aye, Captain.
Oh, dear Lord, that.
You're Captain Crabstick.
Was Captain Crabstick. Now there's a name I haven't heard in a long time. How humiliating.
Humiliating? What are you talking about, man? You're a hero.
Don't be daft, it was just a silly stunt when I was a student, a dare. But I admit it was quite fun at the time.
You were a legend.
Well, I did briefly get a bit of a cult following in '79. My fans became known as the Pincer Movement.
Tom, I have known you for 2 years. How come you've never mentioned this?
Ah, it's all so long ago. And it's an unhappy story. I took the character from a terrible old B movie.
Yeah.
Fish fighters
from outer space.
Yeah, quite right, young man. You know your art house cinema.
Again, I spent a lot of time bewildered. Charlie Higson says there, oh yes, Captain Crabstick. Now there's a name I haven't heard in a long time, and the audience fall about laughing. I'm thinking, what are you laughing at? I don't. Did you pick up on that as well? Did you get that? Where you think, well, hang on, what?
No, I was just thinking then, listening as we play the clip in real time, that it got a bigger laugh than I thought on. Oh gosh, what was it? It wasn't that. I don't know if I can find it in the time available. Let me run back.
You were a legend. Well, I did briefly get a bit of a cult following in '79. My fans became known as the Pincer Movement.
Oh yeah, now that deserved a laugh, but I thought that was quite a good line about the Pincer Movement. I mean, it does have a nice line in puns. Obviously, if you don't like puns, you're not going to like those lines. And the art house film thing I thought was quite good, although getting very technical about the writing, it's quite close to him saying it's a B movie. So, but it still works, still gets a laugh. But no, I can't account for. I mean, I suppose it just sounds funny, doesn't it? Nice bit of alliteration. Captain Crabstick.
I don't think I laughed at any of it, to be honest with you. I thought, things like getting Nathan's name wrong every time, and
that was an oddity because it's not like Nathan. I mean, he happens to be a black actor, I assume, playing a black character. It's not like it's an exotic name that a posh white geezer MP type wouldn't have heard. That would have made sense to me.
I didn't think it was a racial thing. I thought it was just like because he was an MP and he was a nobody, and so he didn't have to bother to learn his name. It was that I kind of thought.
But he came out with some odd names.
Yeah,
I mean, did you say Statham? That's not even a name, is it?
No,
maybe it's a thing. Yeah, that not everything worked for me. I do wonder. I mean, there's no question. And this is not to really excuse it, but bear with me for a sec. There's definitely fewer resources in radio, and that will translate into less preparation time. And that can translate into clunkier lines. But immediately, if you want to dispel that and create the counter argument, you've already made it in John Finnemore's piece, which is Cabin Pressure, where you imagine, well, he's obviously slaved over a hot laptop for a long time and got it pretty polished, I imagine, even before the production process. And maybe it's him taking more time at the writing process that it needs less and is closer to, as it were, perfection.
Interesting, and I wonder whether it makes, whether we make the case there is that John Finnemore writes on his own. Whereas you've got a team of 4 writers here. I really struggled with concentration. Was the other problem that I had, because it was so wordy and so convoluted in its structure, in the sentence structure, that halfway through a sentence I kind of felt myself drifting off and thinking, concentrate, come on, pull yourself back on track, And I even went back a couple of times. And re-listen to and I don't think that's a good thing. Is it? You shouldn't have to be doing that.
No, I mean, ideally you'd want to be engaged throughout, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Also, a bit confusing as to who the audience is. I'm not sure who it's. It's interesting. You were saying in the last comedy Slab podcast when we slabbed Game Face, and you were talking about. You said, I didn't think it was really for me. I didn't feel that I was the target audience. I'm not really. I was listening to this and some of the references, and then they were saying things like, which I think was, did you play that in one of your clips where it said, as humble as Gemma Collins collecting a BAFTA? Oh
yeah, no, I had to look up Gemma Collins,
and I think a lot of people would of our generation, as it were. I just wonder whether that's. I mean, I'd know her because of the time that she hilariously fell through the floor on the Radio 1 thing that she was doing. The beautiful gift of comedy that she gave us. But, other than that...
what are you doing, Grandad, knowing about a Radio 1 thing?
I was all over the internet. Didn't you see it where she came walking through the stage and fell through a trap door?
No.
Which I'm not so sure was left open by accident. But, that's what they said at the time. But...
yeah, you do wonder.
Yeah, and some of the channels, the dubious TV channels I watch, very often advertise Gemma Collins programs. So that's how I know. But a lot of people of that generation probably wouldn't. And I just thought, that's interesting that they use that as a reference. I wonder who the audience is.
Well, it did make me think. I mean, it does feel. I mean, let's get back to your. Initial headline, The Archers of Comedy.
Yeah.
That would point to an older classic Radio 4 demographic. But it felt like it was playing, and I don't think I blame it for trying. It felt like it was playing a twin game with audiences, older classic, whatever it is, 50 plus, 55 plus, Radio 4 audience, skewed towards the south of England, middle class, etc., although not exclusively either of those. But it was also playing a game trying to, and of course it had to be believable that these people on the sub BuzzFeed website, that suggests that skews younger, as they say in the trade, so 20s and 30s. So that absolutely makes sense that they would come up with these references, but it's very hard to have an audience that are going to get everything without a bit of Googling.
Yeah.
Perhaps we're a little bit keener than your average because we're putting it on the comedy slab and seeing who salutes and dissecting it. But that shows how difficult it can be to try and, well, I suppose, be all things to all people.
I mean, equally, I think, the BuzzFeed reference, you got that straight away, or you may have read it in the blurb, I don't know. But equally, I think there'll be a whole generation. I think Radio 4's audience, there'll be a lot of them who wouldn't know who BuzzFeed was.
I don't know whether because obviously this isn't the first in the series, and it's not the first series, so maybe that was set out earlier on. But it's the kind of thing that you need to, for the very reason that you can dip in at any point. You do need to remind your audience of and find clever, inventive ways of doing it that don't make everyone feel they're being patronised. It's a tough old gig writing. I think we do need to cut writers some slack. But yeah, my disappointment is after me bigging up the topical nature of it, that it turns out that I think there was only one line in it that I could say for a fact related to some news from the past week or two. And that was a line about the UN and them steering us away from eating meat because of the methane and the use of energy and climate change and all of that.
I can't help it. Whenever I have meat, I have the methane. It's just my digestive system. I can't help it. I'm a natural born methane spreader. I two others. There were two others. The one said, "Oh, the Premier League starts tomorrow," and they also said, which is kind of the same thing. And I thought actually I felt a bit shortchanged by the whole thing. And it's Liverpool versus Norwich, which was one of the first games.
Oh,
of the
that is
season.
a genuine match, right?
Yeah.
But how soon could you have known that they were going to play each other?
4 months ago, 5 months ago, the fixtures were out.
So not that topical.
Really, really. I mean, I just looked up to see who, some of the TV ones. You've got things like Absolute Power, Ballot Monkeys, Jeffrey Archer, The Truth, Miliband of Brothers, No Job for a Lady, Spitting Image, The Thick of It, UKIP, The First 100 Days, Yes Minister. There's been so many good political comedies. I think if you're going to... And that's the other thing about commissioning. I do kind of blame commissioners for that and say, well, I know you're trying to be topical, but really, with the comedies that have gone before that have done politics, you've got to be good, haven't you, really?
Yeah, because you are in the shadow of a Yes Minister or whatever.
Yeah. And I don't think it really kind of knew what it was, whether it was a political journalism skit or whether it was a politics skit or whether it was just being topical. Or what. It felt very, very confused to me. Very confused. Time hung very heavy on my hands, I have to say, when I listened to this. But
right. Oh dear. Well, we must brace ourselves for a not very generous mark from your good self. Do you want to go first?
No.
Even though it's not my...
No, I went first last time.
Yeah.
You don't get me like that.
No, I don't, obviously. Don't get anything past you. I've got to be careful not to be swayed by your utter negative... No, it's a fair cop, the things you've said.
And I have to say, we always say this, don't we? A, it gives us no delight to say that we didn't enjoy it. And B, what we're saying is, if we say that we didn't enjoy it, is that we didn't enjoy it. That's not to say, I think we never say, dismiss things and say, oh, that's rubbish or that's, whatever. You kind of think, as you said, writing is a hard gig. Acting is a hard gig. Making comedy programs is a hard gig, and so that it's all tempered with that, isn't it? But it's not. It gives us no pleasure. I know that in reviewing something and saying actually it wasn't for us.
I think it was slightly more for me than for you. I think I just cut it a bit more slack, and possibly I don't know. I think I like the idea of a political comedy and even attempting one for me, put someone in credit because politics is not easy to send up or satirize. Well, I suppose, arguably it gets harder the more ridiculous politics gets. Anyway.
Do I was very disappointed as well that it showed its political colours. I thought that was really poor, a really poor show because as you say, personally, I think there's never been an easier time to satire. It's almost a satire itself, isn't it, politics? And I kind of think that's right across the spectrum. It isn't just about the right wing of politics because you don't like it. This isn't a platform for you to, to nail your political colours to the mast. And I think if you do that, you will alienate a lot of people because I think the people who are persuaded by the right-leaning ethos, as it were, tend to not go on marches or shout about it or bang on about it on Twitter. They just think and they just vote. That's all they do. And they just think and they just switch off. And I think a lot of people would go, oh, another thing from the biased broadcasting corporation as they perceive it, another right bashing program. And I think people have just had enough of it, really. I think that's that disappointed me greatly. I thought it was, because there was opportunities. I thought, they're going to mention Corbyn in a minute. Not a sniff of it. Everything that was derogatory was New Labour, if you noticed, were politicians that were no longer active. Poor show.
Right. Well, that could be your headline, couldn't it? Unfortunately, it's a 2-word headline.
Poor show.
I haven't got such a succinct headline, but I'm torn between 2.5 and 3, and I'm going to give it 3 because I just feel a bit more forgiving towards it, and I don't know. It's almost like and I know, I'm aware this is utterly inconsistent and probably failing in my comedy slab duty, but it's almost like I'm reviewing the show I wanted it to be rather than what it actually was.
Yeah.
So I have to confess that, put my hand up and say, yeah, I'm it's like an unreliable narrator. I'm an unreliable marker, but at least I know I am, and I've fessed up. But I like the idea of what it's setting out to achieve. I think my hunch is give them some more hours at the coalface and they would get there. I think all the talent is there. There's no reason for it not to be there. I wonder if it may have even suffered partly because of the trying to be a bit topical, and because of that they're going right up to the deadline and they haven't got the time editing it and reflecting on it, even though, as we're saying, there aren't a huge number of topical references, but still it means the record time will be much closer. I mean, I've worked on shows that generally at least we'd record shows 6 weeks before transmission, so there's loads of time for reflection. You could even re-record it, and very occasionally that did happen in the meantime. Unusual, but yeah.
So what did you say, 3?
Yeah.
I can only add a 1.5 to that, I'm afraid.
Oh, lummy.
Yeah.
So you're giving it 4.5.
Yeah.
No, I've misunderstood you.
4.5 in total.
Nice try. Golly gosh.
Yeah,
You haven't given anything so low for quite some time.
Wasn't for me at all, for so many reasons. It just wasn't for me at all. And I think you're right about the talent. I don't think it's an issue there. I just think sometimes maybe these things don't click. Maybe it needs to go through different processes for script editing. Maybe it needs fewer writers. I don't know. You'd have to sit and watch it, wouldn't you, to see how you could change things. But yeah, it just didn't work for me. 1.5, I'm afraid. 4.5 total.
Lummy, not even half marks. So, what are you going to give me an opportunity to slab next week?
Well, your homework, sir, should you choose to accept it,
I choose.
is now this is an interesting one because this is a fella I came across and I thought, oh, hello, that's interesting. And then I realised, as his stand-up, I thought was interesting, and then I realised he'd actually done a comedy show. The fella in question, I don't know if you've ever come across him, is a guy called Simon Evans.
I know the name.
You probably know the name, probably know the voice as well when it comes to it. Anyway, it's his series, Simon Evans Goes to Market, where he talks about economics, essentially, which you think...
No, I think I have heard one of these, and he has quite a throaty voice, if I remember correctly.
That's the guy. Yeah. You kind of think, well, that's going to be a dry old tapestry, isn't it? Now, I've not heard any of them, so I know his stand-up work, but I've not heard the radio series. So you're one up on me already, although I know you'll be discreet and won't say what you think until you've heard the episode. I've chosen Series 2, the episode called Alcohol, because I thought of you. So it's Simon Evans Goes to Market, Series 2. It's on BBC Sounds right now. In fact, all of the series of Simon Evans Goes to Market is available to listen to, and it's Series 2, the episode called Alcohol. That's your homework for next week.
Right. My homework is to spend an hour in the company of alcohol.
Yeah.
That's usually my week's rations, I think.
Be no surprise if he doesn't turn up, everybody, just so you know.
Yeah. Now, do subscribe to the Comedy Slab. We are based at Spreaker. You'll also find us with some sort of subtly moving graphics on YouTube. And, of course, if you sign up, you'll know the rigmarole. You get the show as soon as it is available, which is on a Monday PM.
And sorry, I was going to say, and don't forget, you can also catch us on social media, man, because we're down with the kids and all that. You can find us. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter and Facebook and Twitter and Facebook.
We really ought to be on Pinterest and all those other ones.
My life is too short. I can't even begin to consider that, to be honest with you. But if you just put in at Comedy Slab, generally you'll find us.
Right, and I am going off to Lobbyland, which is I think somewhere in southwest England, or was.
And until I get that diet sorted out, I'm going off to Blobbyland.